My favorite Jon Stewart moment is where he went on the Colbert Show and he was just joking around with Stephen Colbert, who I think is a full-blown propagandist, about the Wuhan lab leak theory.
The disease is the same name as the lab. That's just a little too weird. Coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat. Like, come.
Okay, wait a second.
What about this? What about this? Listen to this.
Wait a second.
And it was like,
right,
you could see in Stephen Colbert that he was like gun to his head type shit, where he's like, John, stop joking about that.
That could
By
be.
the way,
that could very well be. Wait a second. Wait a second.
The building.
Wait a second. But it could be possible. You could be right. I tell you what I'm suspicious of. I'm suspicious of the Daytona Beach spring break herpes lab. That might be where all the herpes comes from. We'll be right back.
And the backlash was swift. Two things that came out of it were, I'm racist against Asian people, and how dare I align myself with the alt-right.
You spat directly in my face to defend the idea that any inquiry into the origin of this virus was racism.
Okay, why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. Comes from China. I want to be accurate. Yeah, please, John, please.
Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum.
The Wuhan lab, we know that it's been debunked.
Spouting a conspiracy theory that the Chinese made this virus up.
The far right has now found its own virus conspiracy theory.
The Wuhan lab conspiracy theory.
Someday we will stop talking about the lab leak theory and maybe even admit its racist roots. But alas, that day is not yet here.
They worked with media companies to cast that narrative of lab leak as a racist narrative.
Media pundits parroted the narrative while social media platforms censored discussion about the lab leak, labeling it as misinformation.
For how long has the administration been spying on people's Facebook profiles looking for vaccine misinformation?
Well, that was quite a loaded and inaccurate question.
Facebook allegedly took down COVID-19 posts supporting the lab leak theory and vaccine criticism after receiving pressure from the White House.
They didn't actually care whether things was true or false to censor. They just censored it.
Can someone quickly remind me why we were removing claims that COVID is man-made? We were under pressure from the administration and others to do more. We shouldn't have done it.
This pressure and coercion was from the government to censor Americans' First Amendment liberties, First Amendment free speech rights.
Even memes were not spared from the Biden White House's censorship efforts.
The senior White House official was outraged Facebook didn't remove a meme poking fun at vaccines.
10 years from now, you will be watching TV and you will hear, quote, "Did you or a loved one take the COVID vaccine? You may be entitled."
These are people who are sharing information on public platforms that is traveling, is inaccurate.
Facebook used to block people from posting that COVID may have originated for a lab. So is there any concern that things you are trying to block or have taken down might someday turn out to be...
We don't take anything down. We don't block anything.
Just take some of the stuff around COVID. There hadn't been time to fully vet a bunch of the scientific assumptions. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of the kind of establishment on that, kind of waffled on a bunch of facts and, asked for a bunch of things to be censored that in retrospect ended up being more debatable or true.
I was censored myself. I was the advisor to the president giving the data on masks, and the Twitter felt that they should take down my account. The bottom line, masks don't work. What do I mean masks don't work? Masks do not protect the person wearing them, nor do they prevent the spread of a viral respiratory infection.
Cochrane, a highly reputable source.
It's more likely than not that they don't work.
There is just no evidence that masks, make any difference, full stop.
Yeah, but there are other studies. Honestly, I'd rather wear a mask for the rest of my life than get the coronavirus.
I wish you could see the smiles on the faces of my audience, because they're still wearing masks.
I'm a little traumatized every time I go to the fucking store and I'm the only one wearing the goddamn mask. Because y'all are a bunch of fucking plague rats.
There is no one that should be trusted with the power to determine truth versus not. we can discern. We're a free society, by the way, I thought.
The conspiracy theories about the origins of the coronavirus, debunked. That's from Vox.
Yeah.
These are the people who want to censor people, and of course they're the biggest misinformers there is.
They're the people who Stephen Colbert hears about his news from someone who bothered to read Vox.
Are you worried at all about the new booster? No. No? You're not worried that the 5G chip that it puts in you is going to interfere with the 3G chip from the last one?
Bill Gates and I decided we're going to take the chips out now. We're not going to...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Stephen Colbert, they kind of stopped. I thought they stopped being funny because they, comedians are funny when they're ridiculing authority. And they all had to stop doing that.
Colbert? He's just giving the machine what it wants all the time.
Giving the machine what it wants. That's exactly right.
Colbert is dancing with syringes singing the vaccine song.
Vaccine!
And Ariana Grande, is in a super highly produced number from like Hairspray, but converted to vaccines.
Anthony Fauci.
With a giant picture of Anthony Fauci, and everybody's celebrating like it's a May Day celebration.
I don't know. I mean, jokes make things palatable. Comedy just helps an idea go down. That's all.
When we poke ya, well, we know you're gonna be safe from COVID infecting you.
Late night talk shows supply instant feedback from the group. They are given audible cues that inform them of the group's position on popular topics, whether or not they should approve or disapprove of this person or that person.
Last week, President Biden issued a plan to require all private sector businesses with more than 100 employees to mandate vaccines or weekly testing.
Vaccinate your workforce. I call on you now to do that. Require it.
That's great, okay? You want that security. You want that sense of security. Yeah. The boosted, agree.
Cheers, applause, and laughter. Communicate to people where the group stands and therefore what to conform to in order to ensure your survival within the group. Television has always been a tool of the elite. The astronomical costs involved meant that all the messages contained in the programs could come only from the elite. Now, with the internet, the ruling class is losing its stranglehold on the flow of information, fracturing their ability to project what group consensus is.
Podcaster Joe Rogan, frequent spreader of COVID misinformation.
Podcast host and cue ball being pulled out of a claw machine, Joe Rogan.
It's sad seeing like Stephen Colbert, because I used to think he was funny, and seeing him now just like is cringe.
The vaccine songs.
Yeah, you saw that, right? I was like,
that
oh
was
my God.
Strange. Man, I want to be in the meeting when they pitch that. Like, vaccine.
Right.
Like, where's the joke?
Much late night TV is just political indoctrination with comedic imposition. It no longer resembles comedy as much as cheering on the rhetoric and, attacking one half of the country.
They use mRNA, which they say are A-OK. But I read on Facebook that stuff will turn you gay.
Anti-vax theories are on a collision course to crazy town.
Stephen Colbert, concerned, good American citizen with all the right opinions, keeps stepping forward as himself. With all that complex irony that he used to have, he has imploded into some kind of guy at church is telling you what they believe. He's like a scold.
Come on, people, just get the shot.
You really need to get vaccinated as soon as possible.
Get the goddamn shot.
Why the push for the vaccine? Why the mandates for the vaccine? And that is the part that is extraordinary. 85 years old and you get COVID, it's a serious thing. Mm-hmm. So the risk of the vaccine is worth it. In a 27-year-old male, the illness is a nothing. And so the vaccine is all risk.
Right.
Why the push?
The trick they got with the propaganda was making it so that you're responsible for other people's lives.
Look, it's more than about you. Maybe you get the vaccine for other people and not for yourself. You get it so you don't make other people ill.
These vaccines do not prevent infection. So the rationale for mandating vaccine for healthy firefighters and policemen in the military, and hospital workers was emotional. The people's lives it saved were the vulnerable people,
right?
Nursing home people. The benefit to the 30-year-old, I don't see the benefit.
We had more than 5,000 colleges and universities require healthy young people with minuscule risk from COVID to take vaccines with any significant side effect. That's an abject outrage.
A coroner has concluded the BBC Radio Newcastle presenter Lisa Shaw died due to complications from her AstraZeneca COVID vaccination.
It's basically a blood clot, which then leads to bleeding on the brain. Fit and healthy, she was a non-smoker.
My mum used to joke that Lisa followed the rules very, very closely. I'm absolutely not an anti-vaxxer, but I say this and I think maybe the answer is to give people the alternative.
Once the numbers started coming in, we had over 2,000 deaths reported worldwide in the VAERS system, so that was concerning. Here's the current VAERS report compared to other drugs. Hydroxychloroquine, 80 deaths per year over 36 years. The flu vaccine, a total of 2,500 deaths, about 75 a year. Let me skip ahead. The COVID vaccines, over 37,000 deaths. Today, by the way, 24% of those deaths reported are occurring on the day of vaccination or within 2 days. Vaccine injuries are real.
There was not appropriate transparency from the beginning about the potential side effects of these vaccines. And I do think there was inappropriate decisions by some to try to report any side effects because they argued that would make the public less likely to get vaccinated. They don't prevent infection. They do have side effects.
You're admitting side effects, but you have to admit the people of the agencies, they're still by and large denying this, right? They're saying, well, they're mild, they're rare, and they're mild.
This is a really rare event.
Rarely this happens.
With a warning of very infrequent adverse outcomes.
Of a very low risk of blood clots.
They're not rare and they're severe to death.
Part of that is because it was suppressed. There's data now coming out in peer-reviewed literature that there were a significant number of deaths from the vaccine.
Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend wanted me to ask you a question about side effects.
No, they're fine.
Ooh, J&J, see me shake? That's a side effect of the birth control.
So are you saying women shouldn't be worried about the vaccine?
I'm saying we don't have room for more worries.
The media class are really soulless monsters.
Colbert's a puppet for Big Pharma. Colbert must have some major skeletons in his closet to be pushing the vaccine.
For many liberals, following the science became not just a guide, but a tribal marker. It became very easy to paint any dissent from liberal orthodoxy as anti-science.
Who said you have to wear the mask? Because I believe in science.
Oh, oh my God. 2 days ago, 4,000 people died of COVID-19.
Okay, and who's telling you that?
Dude,
who's telling you that? Who's telling you that? The fake news?
There's been a lot of politicization that has gone on over these last 3 years of things that should have been purely public health issues.
I'll be the first in line to take it, absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
Politicization of science is dangerous, but it's not a new thing.
People who don't want to get vaccinated are conservative, Republican, white.
The small fringe minority who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
Right now, Canada's capital, Ottawa, is being besieged by a group of anti-do-anything-about-COVID truckers called the Freedom Convoy.
Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination. Ils sont extrémistes. Qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là?
He said they don't believe in science. They're often misogynistic, often racist. No, they're not. Do we tolerate these people? It's like, tolerate them. Now you do sound like Hitler. Holding unacceptable views.
Wow. I'm surprised to hear that Trudeau said those things.
You can catalyze a group to really, hate another group.
Oh, yes.
This group is being relentlessly attacked.
We must make the lives of the unvaccinated a total misery until we crush the resistance and break their spirit in order to force compliance.
And, we saw a Toronto Star in Canada write a full front page article saying, let them die. It was just so hostile towards, those of us who said, no, you know what? I'm not interested.
If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's your choice. But don't think you can get on a plane or a train besides vaccinated people and put them at risk.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them.
It's their choice. It's their choice. Just leave her alone.
No, there's a store requirement and a state requirement. It's not a
mandate.
It's
What are you
all of
even
our
in here
job
for?
as a community to come together.
You're not
and
even
make
shopping.
sure
You're
that
going
people are
around to
shamed.
harass people. Stop following me.
You're making a bad decision. You're a bad American.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. What more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated.
Kim Kardashian West organized a video call between Dr. Fauci and dozens of A-list celebrities. Each of them have enormous numbers of followers. I can say to them, it's important to wear a mask. They get on their accounts and say, wear a mask, and it goes out to an additional couple of million people.
Hey, go out and use your platform to influence people to take the vaccination.
Vaccine, 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 vaccine.
From Dolly singing.
I'm begging of you, please don't hesitate.
If Olivia Rodrigo tells you to get vaccinated, you get vaccinated.
People think they're immune. Oh, I'd never fall for marketing. I'm too smart.
Got it.
What we ended up with back in 2020, with all of these families and friends completely divided again back into those sort of football teams.
It's a political football. It's got nothing to do with science, isn't it? The people are drunk with certainty. That's not science.
Jennifer Aniston is doubling down on cutting non-vaccinated people out of her inner circle. Jen took a stand on her Instagram story with a disappointed emoji and text that read, these comments. She feels the opposing arguments are based on fear and propaganda. Could I be any more vaccinated?
I got my very first vaccine this weekend.
If you're not vaccinated, get the fuck out of my house.
Fuck them, fuck their freedom.
If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
People with pre-existing deep connection were completely separated.
It's not like I'm anti-mask or anything. I just sometimes wonder if any of the things we did actually helped.
Gina.
No. We can talk about this incredibly complicated and emotional topic.
Did I have to dump my oldest friend just because he didn't get a booster?
I have some loved ones in my life who I have tried to convince to get it and say, I just care about you. I'm sure you're doing your own research, as you say, but I can't imagine what it is because I see no legitimate research saying that this isn't the right thing to do.
There are some people who still have legitimate concerns, and I really hope we reach those folks.
We've reached a point where the supply of vaccines far exceeds demand, and it's time to start getting creative about how to get some of the stragglers over the finish line.
Some lawmakers call these cash offers a bribe.
Problematic prizes.
That's right, you could win $1 million.
Cash payouts and gift cards.
As a physician, I want my patients to get vaccinated because that's the best thing for them medically, not that that's the best thing for them financially.
Honestly, I gotta admit, the $100 incentive certainly made a difference.
The new incentive, $100 for a booster.
A $500 bonus.
For that $10,000 prize.
Free fries when you get vaccinated?
Vaccination. We're going to give 5 custom hunting shotguns away. You have got to get your first shot.
Talking about paying people to get vaccinated, when you start talking about incentivizing things to get people vaccinated, there's something else going on with that.
Jelly bean they gave me for getting my second dose.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe.
No, it's something else going on.
It is something going on.
There's something else.
You're right.
Y'all campaign is about fear. It's about inciting fear in people. You all attack people with fear.
But your repeated denials have worn thin, and a majority of Americans, frankly, don't believe you. Even the NIH now admits that EcoHealth Alliance did perform experiments in Wuhan that created viruses not found in nature. Your persistent denials, though, are not simply a stain on your reputation, but are a clear and present danger to the country and to the world.
People decry vaccine hesitancy. It's coming from the gobbledygook that you give us.
All that theater that goes on, congressional committees and the Rand Pauls and all that other nonsense, That's noise. It's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. That's dangerous.
Because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent.
He views himself less as a scientist and more as an infallible spokesperson, the kind of spokesperson who they'll make bobblehead dolls of.
The editor-in-chief of Science and the New York Times health correspondent both own Fauci bobbleheads. You certainly shouldn't have a bobblehead of someone you're covering.
No one gets more favorable media coverage than Anthony Fauci. He has pretty much the unyielding support of the legacy media. They revere him and they do not want to criticize him. He chose to go on all these TV programs and become the face of the pandemic response, making strong claims, and he couldn't back it up. Lockdown, wrong. Social distancing, wrong. Masking with young kids, wrong. Ostracize people, censor voices, and then still have the lay media groveling at your feet.
Anthony Fauci, the only guy in the room who knows what the hell he's talking about. Jimmy, let's do it. Come on, doctor. Let's go get a booster shot.
Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on the bottom. Guys like Fauci, they've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to. And they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera.
I'd like to believe people listen to me, but some don't.
First of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down. We didn't recommend shutting everything down. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down.
Elon Musk tweets out, his pronouns are prosecute Fauci.
I, quite frankly, don't know what they're talking about. What are the charges? If trying to save people's lives is a crime, then I'm guilty, you know?
Yeah.
Making his way onto the cover of Time, People, and even In Style magazine.
In some ways, he's a comforting voice. He got pretty much every single key pandemic issue wrong. Making a toddler wear a cloth mask, that's as anti-science and anti-common sense as it gets.
They were traveling for the holidays when they were kicked off a plane.
Their 2-year-old daughter was required to wear a mask during the flight. They were simply told those were the guidelines.
2-year-olds are getting kicked off planes. Is that fair?
He says now in the congressional hearing, we didn't have time to study that. We just had to act. That is also a false dichotomy. These are decisions that were wrong at the time, and he refused to hear other points of view on that. He only listened to himself.
Mom, can I go outside and play with my friends?
No, honey, there's still something going around.
Okay.
The big sin, what we as a society did to children, massive learning losses. Lockdowns do not work, and lockdowns are extraordinarily harmful. That was known. We broke the social contract we have by harming our children as a society and injecting, for instance, experimental drugs into children that have side effects, many of which are uncertain, for a disease that those children, healthy children, did not have a significant risk from. To use them as shields, I mean, this is almost unspeakable. Of the vaccinated kids, 9 contracted myocarditis. Of the unvaccinated, no cases of myocarditis were recorded.
They are still recommending boosters today, and it's still now in the childhood vaccine schedule. Children don't have a problem with COVID. It's not necessary for children.
Taking the rim off a basketball hoop, that's a penalty you should pay. Loss of freedom in the absence of gain is a harm. But you couldn't even say you were stupid, because the climate was so hostile back then, and I find that quite distasteful.
Almost all cases, or the vast majority of cases, were spread indoors. So, of course, the lockdowns recommending people stay indoors and pulling people off the beaches, forbidding them from being in the parks, taking boats out to arrest people surfing out off the coast of San Diego. I mean, this was a completely antithetical opposite to what was known, implying that they were just there was a groupthink going on. The medical community was a disgrace during COVID. It's embarrassing to be a doctor and call these people my peers.
Mandatory masking a good thing?
Yes, the vaccine changes your DNA a tiny bit. That's a good thing.
Vaccines will have side effects, and that's a good thing.
J&J vaccine is not as effective, but still a good thing.
COVID has invaded our kids' pretend play. Experts say it's a good thing.
Experts say Biden's mandates are well within his constitutional power. Sorry.
There wasn't a consensus of the experts. Quite the opposite, the lie of the false consensus. And the president of the United States was being fed completely wrong information from Fauci and Birx.
So the 60s had John, Paul, George, and Ringo. 2020, we've got Tony and Deborah.
The Beyonce of medicine.
Hi, Dr. Fauci. I certainly have a crush on him.
They were using and really deeply misusing, weaponizing psychology. The government's putting out this highly coercive propaganda. For the women, it was all about sort of staying in community, looking after your children, etc.
We will be reunited with our friends and family. All we have to do is just take the vaccine.
For the men, it was the government subconsciously saying to you, you're a wimp if you don't get yourself vaccinated, get your family vaccinated.
כן, מה איתך? מתחסן? אבל אומר לך את האמת, אני מפחד, אני לא יודע מה יש בחיסונים האלה. כן, אל תהיה ליצן. החיסון הזה עבר את טובי המומחים בעולם. בסדר, אבל אני צעיר, הקורונה לא מסוכנת לי.
And it's so manipulative.
Conspiracy has such a big part of the public conversation right now, seeing patterns where none exist.
Yes. He repeatedly pushed the idea that lab leak was a conspiracy theory akin to 5G causing COVID itself.
I've heard these conspiracy theories, and like all conspiracy theories, they're just conspiracy theories.
That's what you told the American people.
I don't think the concept of there being a lab leak is inherently a conspiracy theory. What is conspiracy is the kind of distortions of that particular subject, like it was a lab leak and I was parachuted into the CIA like Jason Bourne and told the CIA that they should really not be talking about a lab leak.
Thank you.
That's the conspiracy.
Appreciate that.
I did have multiple calls with Fauci. They wanted a single narrative, and that I obviously had a different point of view.
So, in your expert opinion, was the Wuhan Institute conducting gain-of-function research on
Absolutely. I think it probably caused the greatest pandemic our world has seen.
Whether or not you believe the virus leaked from a lab or didn't, their conduct around it was egregious, preventing people from having a dialogue on perhaps the single most important viral origin story of the last 100 years.
Your approval of a grant that went to a company that gave some of the money to the Wuhan lab, used gain of function to change the nature, the virality of certain coronaviruses that became COVID-19, so you're to blame for COVID-19.
Yes, and I also did it so I could make $1 billion from the vaccines.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So the idea is that you already had a deal with like Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca. So how much of that is true? 90%, 95%? Give me a round number.
What an odd thing to say.
He ends up both in a position to fund and fuel the research that creates the virus, and then he's the go-to guy for advice about what we should do about it. That's a very odd coincidence.
The cover-up went beyond public statements. Dr. David Morenz of the NIH deleted emails that could have contained valuable insights into early discussions. When he deleted them, he made the comment, "I think we're safe now. I think we're safe now."
That is an outlier. I hope that the public and the audience doesn't realize or doesn't come to the conclusion, if I might say, that that is reflective.
You say it was an outlier, but there's a concern that it does diminish trust.
The experience of COVID was so scarring for so many. All of a sudden, you've seen it, we've seen it, this deep distrust in institutions like the government and legacy media.
You can see the complete collapse of journalism through the COVID story.
The intolerance of dissent, the fact that a population over 2 years has been trained to never question the pronouncements of authorities that are often wrong.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
The virus stops with every vaccinated person.
A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them.
It's sort of like the news. When it's in the New York Times, you assume that there is a gatekeeper there that has vetted this. But in reality, our modern media is kind of an information laundering system. Gossip and rumor become truth and fact, become canon very quickly. These are shifting sands. Well, who gets to decide?
We don't know how effective cloth masks are, but if you don't wear them, you're going to be banned from all sorts of involvement in public life. Even though I'm vaccinated and protected, I still demand that you do, to the point where I want you to lose your job if you're not yet convinced that it's safe for you and your children and you don't obey. I'm concerned about some of the enduring political, cultural, and social outcomes.
They have undermined their own credibility. The lack of trust is caused by the behavior of the public health leaders, the demonization of people who didn't want to take the vaccine, by the mandates that should have never been in place, literally never been in place for COVID vaccines for anybody in a free society.
Emmanuel Macron told a newspaper that he wanted, with his vaccine pass, to piss off France's 5 million unvaccinated citizens.
Throughout human history, governments have loved for their citizens to be at odds with each other. The king and the queen would look over the castle wall and see that the people are fighting with each other, and they'd high-five each other and say, "This is great because I know they're not coming over the wall." Anytime there's an entire population that agrees on something, the government is in great peril. What people in power fear is the people actually getting along.
The crowd of anti-lockdown and anti-government agitators was surrounded. Police have formed a ring around the main pack of protesters and are one by one plucking out the troublemakers and arresting them.
On this day in September, they were cracking down on a group of men who were not wearing face masks.
They didn't do anything, they just didn't have a mask on.
USA! USA! USA!
There is a degree of schizophrenia in the country. How far apart people can be.
I just want one pack. No, not one pack.
You love Americans, put your mask on, sir. So stay the fuck away from me 6 feet.
Did you see Fauci's
Cowards,
emails?
close your mouth and you put your mask on.
COVID 1984! Libtards! Libtards! All by yourself, worried about a fucking flu! Here comes another mask-wearing clown!
Putting everybody else at risk. Get the fuck away from me! You have no mask on!
That's none of your business.
It is my business!
No, it's not.
Fuck off, you stupid cunt!
Look at you fools, you got a fucking doily on your face, you retard! Fucking, I'll beat that fucking mask off your face!
No. You touch me with that bat? Get out.
Fuck you and get...
These are the employees at Ace Hardware in fucking Seattle. What a fucking punk bitch.
Right now, I have the right to use reasonable force. Fuck you!
Restrictions came at great social cost and created a strong public backlash.
Was there overreach by the government? I think there's no question about it.
Should you expect your bank accounts to be frozen today?
We'll be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. Accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen.
We had people who lost their jobs because they didn't get vaccinated. Overreach. The lockdowns, overreach.
I was just taking a walk. How dare you take a walk?
Pandemic control officers followed him to his door and then sealed it shut.
The lockdowners implemented a reckless, pseudoscientific policy. There was an explosion of psychiatric illness in teenagers and college kids from the isolation, not the virus. Suicidal ideation, massive explosion in drug abuse, substance use.
Police say she was working at Big Bear Supermarket last week when Tucker shot her over a disagreement about pulling up his face mask.
She lost her life defending what she thought was right.
The coronavirus pandemic did not happen during the Middle Ages, but we're no better than the people who survived the Black Death. They learned nothing, we learned nothing.
Wake up. The Delta variant is named after the brainwave of when you're most asleep because they're rubbing it in your face.